Yeah, hi, good evening. This is the fifth session of the Karnataka Votes series. I'm glad that we've been able to accomplish so much. We started in December. We started with the first session providing an overview of Karnataka's political and electoral history. That set the context for further sessions. We had specific sessions discussing the relevance of mathas in Karnataka politics, communalism in Karnataka politics, and then we looked at caste, where we looked at the dominance of Lingayats and Vokkaligas. We were eager to do a few more sessions in between, but we are happy with whatever we've accomplished so far. So today's session is a sort of rounding off of what are the issues that have been discussed by various political parties, what are salient to the voters. And to discuss that, I'm very happy that we have a terrific panel. I mean, we wanted a panel like this because Sugata Srinivasraju, a lot of you know, mainly perhaps because of his book, now, his extensive authoritative biography of Gowda. But for me, Sugata I've been following Sugata for more than a decade now, his writings. So I've learned a lot, an expert on Karnataka, and his columns sort of feed into my own work, you know, if I can acknowledge that. And we have Ms. Asha Krishnaswamy, a very senior journalist who was heading the Political Reporting Bureau at Deccan Herald, am I right? And whose reportage I've followed very keenly over the past few weeks because Ms. Asha Krishnaswamy has been traveling all over the state, meeting a bunch of politicians, trying to give the readers a sense of what voters are thinking. So it's very valuable that she's here. Our third panelist is Professor Chandan Gowda, who will be here I suppose in a few minutes. Chandan is also a very sort of sagacious and very experienced political analyst. He teaches at the Institute for Social and Economic Change, so it will be great to have him. I just wanted to briefly read out a short note that I've prepared. It works as a primer also, to sort of contextualize this discussion that we're going to have. So bear with me for 5 minutes before we move on to more scintillating commentary. In a marathon race, runners pass through different phases in the 42-kilometer long test of endurance, strategizing and saving the energy for most of the race as they steadily jog towards the finish line. Runners pump up their tired muscles and give it their all in the final few kilometers. This is the stage of the campaign that we are in right now, where the three main parties in the fray, the Congress, the BJP and the JDS, are wringing all their resources to the furthest extent as they strive to walk away with the prize of governing Karnataka. Voting across Karnataka will be held in one single phase on May 10th, which is just 5 days away now. So the strength of the Legislative Assembly is 224, which means that a party or a coalition needs 113 seats to govern Karnataka. In the last elections of 2018, BJP had emerged as the single largest party with 104 seats, with a vote share of 36.35%. Hi, welcome Chandan. I've introduced you already, so the audience knows who you are. Your reputation precedes you. Please join us. The Congress had a larger vote share of 38.14%, but ended up with only 80 seats because, the Congress's vote base is scattered. The JDS won 37 seats with a vote share of 18.3%. These numbers changed after 2019 when the BJP toppled the Congress-JDS coalition government, and the BJP currently has 113 MLAs, which just makes the cut. The Congress has 74 and the JDS 27. So journalists and political analysts usually use the prism of caste or regions to understand, analyze and comprehend elections. So I just wanted to state these aspects as well. Politically, the most important castes in Karnataka are the Lingayats and the Vokkaligas, who are estimated to constitute around 17 and 14% of the electorate respectively. Although leaked portions of the caste census seriously downplay these estimates. Lingayats are dominant in north and central Karnataka. So if you look at the map of Karnataka from Bidar all the way to Chitradurga, Davangere, Shimoga, so Lingayats are a dominant caste and you find them all over southern Karnataka, particularly in Chamarajnagara, where they are present in significant numbers. And Vokkaligas are dominant in southern Karnataka. So all the way from Tumkur, Chikkaballapura to Hassan. So it's an arc in a way. Both these castes have a disproportionately high representation in the legislative assembly, and it is a measure of their influence that they've been granted the highest number of tickets by all three political parties. So BJP has granted 67 tickets to Lingayats this time around and 44 to Vokkaligas. The Congress has given 48 tickets to Lingayats and 41 to Vokkaligas. The JDS has provided 54 tickets to Vokkaligas. So you know what is the base of the JDS, and 44 to Lingayats, mainly outside the bastion of Old Mysore. So among other castes, Dalits constitute around 17% of the population and are the largest social bloc, recognized social bloc based on numbers, while tribals constitute another 7% of the population. Muslims at 14% are a significant religious minority, and while the Congress and the JDS has given tickets to this community, not in proportion to their population, relatively lesser compared to what the numbers are. The BJP, of course, as we all know, does not give tickets to Muslims as part of their policy. Other major backward castes are those of the Kurubas, which are spread all over the state, and the Idigas, who are also known as Billavas in coastal Karnataka. So apart from these, there are assorted backward castes spread all over Karnataka and a small number of upper caste Brahmins. So this is the caste matrix. Region-wise, usually for administrative and analytical purposes, so we have the northwest portion of Karnataka, starting from Vijaypura to Gadag. Vijaypura, Bagalkote, Belgavi, Dharwad, Gadag, and Uttar Kannada, and Haveri also, which is Kittur Karnataka or Bombay Karnataka. Then we have Hyderabad Karnataka, or what is now known as Kalyana Karnataka, from Bidar all the way to Vijayanagara. And then we have coastal Karnataka. Coastal Karnataka, Uttar Kannada sometimes included in coastal Karnataka and sometimes is included for analytical purposes in Bombay Karnataka. That's one unresolved sort of district. Then we have the Malnad and the central Karnataka districts, Shimoga, Davangere, Chitradurga, Chikmagaluru, Hassan. And then we have Old Mysore. Bengaluru, of course, constitutes a separate region, perhaps because it has 28 seats, which is significant. So this is in terms of introduction, and I just before we sort of I had a few specific questions, but to start off with, since the theme of this conversation is issues that, that decide the elections. So if the panel is starting with Ms. Asha, if you could start off with what do you think some of the salient issues leading up to the elections?
It's on, is it? Eldrigu namaskara. If you want me to be politically correct and idealistic statements I had to give here as a journalist, then I can give a different. But if I had to be very practical and what's happening on the ground and every day, you're all highly elite people. I need not hide, I think. So it is, again, every election, 3 issues matter, 3 Cs. The same 3 Cs are speaking this time also. We thought that corruption would be an issue, but over the last few weeks, it has taken a back seat. When the election heat, when it started, there was a lot of talk about that. But when you go to the ground, it is again, even in reserved constituency, like for example in Nanjangud, I was there, it is a reserved constituency for scheduled caste. So there also it is again 3 Cs, that is caste, community, and then culture. Where does the culture stand is post-elections, your resort culture. That's
So
what
caste and
happens.
community sound synonymous.
Caste
no?
and cash, sorry.
Caste, cash, yeah. Okay. That makes
So that is what is happening every even. I mean, I never expected. See, Varuna and Nanjangud, if I give with an example, I think you will be understanding it better. Otherwise, it becomes too, just a statement. See, when you go to Varuna and Nanjangud, Varuna is a general constituency. Nanjangud is a reserved constituency. So I thought in Nanjangud reserved constituency, I thought there will be not much of caste conflict because both Dalits, no? So it is reserved for. Again, there the voters' population is coming into picture. In Varuna also same thing. So it is caste, that is, Mr. Siddharama himself said, my victory will be decided with just 2% swing. He is waiting.
His victory in Varuna or Congress's
Varuna.
victory in Varuna? Okay.
That is the usual calculation by any political party in Karnataka is 30 or 35% vote share they have. You go by the history of. So beyond that, how do they reach the required?
Yes.
That is where sometimes there will be wave. It is not always, it has to be these 3 Cs. Sometimes there is a wave, that kind of wave. We thought that corruption could be a sort of wave. But
So caste, cash, and corruption.
all this, no.
Culture. Sorry.
The culture, culture in quotes. So we are back to the same. In 2018, extensively I covered elections. What I saw, I'm seeing the same. Not much of. So when I was interviewing Mr. Somanna, who is a candidate in Chamarajanagar and Nanjangud both, I was asking him what changes you are seeing as he is a Bangalorean who has gone there and trying his, he says, people have not changed. They are same. It is only we have changed a lot. That is candidates.
Okay.
So
But what does culture mean? I don't understand.
culture in the sense, in Karnataka, we are known for having that post-election culture, no? Going to resort.
Resorts. Okay.
Resort culture start because now there is, most of the pre-poll surveys of television channels, local television channels shows that there could be hung. Then again, this activities may start. That is what people are thinking. Still, people talk, but whether they will go behind one party, let us have political stability. Let us assume that, people will vote for political stability. They voted for BJP, there was no political stability. Again,
They did not vote for BJP, right? I mean, in terms of vote share.
later it was brought to 120, right? Then you had numbers. Again, there was
After
instability.
the defections, after Operation
And then
Kamala.
Mr. Siddaramaiah was CM for 5 years. He had
Yes.
no political hiccups or his government, there was absolutely peacefully it went on. But
It
people
was a
didn't
stable
bless him.
government, yeah.
Still, he didn't get majority when he went to elections. Next elections, it didn't give stability to. He got only under his leadership 80. But that's the first time an opposition party got 80 seats. No other opposition, ruling party since 83, it had secured 80 seats.
Okay.
That also reflected his good governance. But that was not enough for him to get
Majority.
simple
yeah,
majority
simple
also.
majority.
So if you ask me a question, what decides election? So many factors decides. There is no one answer.
But 3 C's you would like to emphasize.
Not only that, there are so many factors. Each constituency has its own dynamics. What works in Nanjangud may not work in Bangalore. Here, candidates' caste doesn't matter at all.
But it
When you go
becomes-
out of Bangalore, in most of the constituency, it matters.
Then, I mean, it's in a way a very sort of demoralizing
It is not demoralizing.
perspective, no? That
Among
there are
the
no issues.
issues is, yeah, that is, now if you have to be very practical, it is Bajrangi is the issue.
Yeah, but for a small section of the population, or you think it has potential to?
No, they are always such, those who think straight, they are those who can take their own call without getting influenced.
Yeah.
They will continue to take.
Okay.
But that, how much of the total voting population is that population?
Interesting.
Isn't it?
Yes.
That's the,
This is one perspective. If I could move to Sugata. So, would you agree with this? I would think that, you know, it's a sort of slightly demoralizing perspective if we say issues aren't salient, but there are, because I would like to still think and I would like to argue that there are some overarching state level issues that matter to the electorate across constituencies. So what would your response be to that?
Should I do it or should
No,
Chandan
you
start?
can start and then I'll move to Chandan.
No, I mean, by and large, what Asha was trying to tell us. So, by and large, I mean, what she was trying to say is correct, you know, overall. There are multiple narratives. You know, there's no one single narrative that you could put your finger on and say this is going to decide the elections. There's certainly no wave. And waves are I don't think I've seen a wave election in Karnataka. I think the last wave election was, I think, Devarajaras, yes, I mean, I thought it would be Devarajaras, but then after that, the Virendra Patil election was the last wave election. That is, the Congress's vote share has been declining from 82 on. So whenever they have held on or formed a government, it is always contingent on or dependent on how the opposition.
Well, if I could correct you, no, Congress vote share hasn't been declining. No, from
No, I'm telling you, I'm
2013
coming
to
to that.
2013 to 2018, there was a marginal increase. Huh.
No, that average 33%, 34% is where I'm pegging it. But 82 on, whenever, when it spiked, that is 89 election when Virendra Patil. 178. Yeah, 178, that election. Or the SM Krishna election. It was always, it's always been after the big Devarajaras thing. It's always dependent on what's happening in the opposition space. So whenever they have done well, it's been a default thing when the Janata Dal has broken up. Right? 89 it happened, 99 it happened, and I think even later too. So it's essentially that has been the kind of, why I am telling you this is that, the opposition space sort of falling apart. Even 2013, corruption was a huge issue. You saw Siddaramaiah walking to Ballari and doing all kinds of things. But if you go and look at micro level data of all the regions that he passed through or whatever, did he win seats? Did he strike huge? No. He got 122, but what was his vote share? It was around 33-34%.
Stagnant
Vote share. That's precisely what I'm trying to tell you. So that 33-34% vote share came, and he still could form a government only because Yediyurappa had taken away 6 to 7% and Sri Ramulu had taken away 3%. So that focused, concentrated vote share that the BJP would get, the strike rate of these two parties are high because, Janata Dal and BJP, the strike rate is high because of their concentrated vote share, and that got dissolved in that election. So even in 2013, when we were all made to believe, even I was trying to make people believe that as a journalist, that Ballari, mining, corruption, that did not play a role. This is, hindsight, and if you look at the numbers, I'm going only by data. I'm not trying to say that it did not play a role. It did give an air cover, it gave you talking points, and it made Chandan, me and you happy that we were able to talk, because we had to talk about something. You can't say there's no wave, there's no issue, there's no that. But I'm just looking at numbers. If that was such a big election, Congress should have got 40 to 41% vote share. And Congress has crossed the 40% vote share. The last time it did was the Virendra Patil election. That is just about crossed that. Okay. But the real big numbers were the last time they got that was 78. That is the Devaraja's election. 72 was even bigger. Right? So Karnataka, this stagnancy is there. You know, I'm coming to your point in a completely different route. This stagnancy exists because no political party in Karnataka has been able to create issues which kind of polarizes the electorate, either on development or communalism or caste, even caste. See, it's now like, when I used to work in the Times of India group, they would always look at me and they would say, oh, Times of India's advertising thing has saturated in the city, so we're looking at you. Why don't we partner and get more advertisement from the rural areas? It's like that. Even the caste thing has saturated. There is a certain limit to that thing, and this particular election, things have further got balkanized. Right? This is in all my interviews, I've been saying this is a sub-caste election for very different reasons. So if you look at the stagnation of vote shares that we have seen in the last 82 on, because I use that as a benchmark, 82, because that was the first time that we formed a non-Congress government in the state. So ever since 85 became the big turning point after the general elections, because that's when Hegde came to power on his own, and the Lingayats, a substantial influence of the Lingayats, the Okaligas. It was an inclusive kind of electorate that was bringing the Janata Dal to power, the Janata Party and the Janata Dal. You don't see that after that election. After that, it's always either you say the Lingayat factor plays a big role, or the Okaligas are voting a certain way. And Okaligas also, see, this is again a misconception which in our NDTV discussion, Chandan cleared it up and he did it really well. See, they said, oh, they are getting only 39% vote of the Okaligas. That's the Janata Dal. The Lokniti data was saying that. So they thought it had declined. So he correctly clarified that's 40% is around what they get. It's not that all 100% voters go and cast their vote in the favor of Janata Dal just because the patriarch is an Okali. That doesn't happen. Similarly, that's also true with Lingayats. 100% Lingayats don't go and cast their vote in a certain way. So if you look at all this, if you look at the stagnation of vote shares, Karnataka has been deficit in terms of big issues for the last 30 years.
That's a very interesting point, Sugata. So, okay,
let's... So coming to one last point. So coming to this election, we having covered politics for this is my 28th year. I see that the same pattern is getting repeated. Finally, you try a bit of caste, you try a bit of corruption. Now finally Bajrang Dal is coming to help you. It's basically, everybody is looking at that 3 to 4% swing that they need to form a government, so that 3 to 4. So why did the Congress include such a nonsensical phrase in a manifesto which shouldn't have been there in the first place? You could have said all communal parties or all communal organizations will be dealt with according to law. That was a powerful enough statement to make. But why did they name Bajrang Dal? Because some idiot in Delhi guy who would be running the campaign would have told them, sir, ये बोल दीजिए 2% Muslims का swing हो जाएगा and we will get the thing. That's how they think.
I don't know, I disagree, but anyway.
This is... See, this is... It's not a non-local... See, that is why now you see, yesterday what is DK Shiv Kumar doing? He is going around and saying, I'm going to build Hanuman temple in every taluk of Karnataka. I am going to bring, he used a lovely phrase. You should just look at that little bite that he gave standing outside Chamundeshwari temple. And he says, I will bring Hanuman ideology at the taluk level to energize the youth. What is Hanuman ideology? So this is Congress. This is how they mess up. Mess up in the sense for us people sitting in this room who are all say Anglophone to a certain extent, elite to a certain extent. So we think that, oh, this is, but he is being practical, but somebody else was impractical. So issues, when you talk of issues, I have told you numbers, I have told you caste, I have told you the communalism thing, I have spoken about corruption. So this is broadly what I think. So I don't really know what the issues are.
Thank you, Sugata, for that well explained answer. Ma'am, you please take the mic. Okay. No, so coming to that.
Vikhar, just to give a sense for the. No, the Congress dominance since independence in Karnataka, the only opposition party would get 15 seats and no more. That was the Praja Socialist Party. And then you would have 41 independents, 36 independents, 25 independents. A really fascinating history, actually, if you think about.
62, you had a Swatantra Party getting around 12 seats.
Yes.
Swatantra Party was doing well in Karnataka. PSP and Swatantra could dislodge any major thing. That was easy.
It's only with the Janata that semblance of a strong opposition emerged, post-emergency. Vikhar, the answer to your question, I mean, if you look closely, there's a lot of noise, it's crowded. You can discern some gestures that are recurring across these parties. Right? So the BJP will say Modi first, and everything else follows. And JDS will say regional party, farmers party, and everything else follows. The Congress is trying to say peace and harmony in the state. Sarva Janangada Shantiya Tota, you saw that Kuvempu's phrase prominently on their manifesto, in their ads. And then good governance, no corruption, etc. And then a bouquet of other offerings customized to
guarantees.
All of those things. All of which should make us think that they all have some ways of addressing the economic desperation of the people, being felt in different ways by women, by the elderly, by the unemployed, etc. This, I think, these don't really add up to make for a great idea driving an election. But this is what is driving things. And the Bajrang Dal thing, I don't know, Sugata, in terms of what it might cost the Congress electorally, it's unclear. Apparently, even they felt, let's do this. We may win votes, especially in the coastal areas where some Muslims votes may have gone the SDPI way. And even here, where it's now clear that the Muslims are voting strategically between the Congress and the JDS. And
even Kumaraswamy stated this, right? Muslims should vote strategically. He made this
statement. He said that over and over again. It's come out in the papers only now. Tells you something about how the media is listening. And he's been magnanimous in that respect. You don't hear a similar reciprocation from the other side.
From the Congress, certainly
anyway,
not.
Be that as it may, the doubt is still very strong that the JDS may go with the BJP. And this doubt we know helps whom. But I really feel it's time for some magnanimity in the political space, a la Nitish Kumar and RJD in Bihar, Sharad Pawar and the Shiv Sena in Bombay, where they actually patched up an extraordinary coalition with a sense of taking on someone who is their common enemy, who's out to finish them off. I suppose.
But they tried it in 2019, right? And we know how wobbly that coalition was.
That was at the parliamentary level.
No. I'm saying, post-election, 2018, post-election, the Congress and the JDS formed a very wobbly, shaky coalition government, which was waiting to be toppled.
Right. You could see it in two ways. You could see it as, okay, there is evidence of how they're going to do, and we can't expect anything better. Or they've learned from that and will do better. I would like to
I'd be skeptical, but if you could sort of move on.
I think his expectation is right, in the sense there should be some magnanimity in that political
But there is no nobility in politics.
No, that's precisely the point. There's no nobility. But then you should look at, I think I can share it with this audience here. there has, for the last 6 months, there has been a great deal of effort
Huh.
where they are trying to bring the old Janta Dal back to kind of existence. You know, I mean, at least trying to get the old chakra symbol back, or having an arrangement where, you know, you don't compete against each other, or putting up a single candidate against the BJP. All these discussions are happening in that space. It's just that the media, which is so blind, and they either, see, we all, even as liberals, I don't know what it really means. I was listening to Francis Fukuyama being interviewed by Sanjay Ruparelia this morning in a podcast. And I mean, I really got confused what liberalism would be at the end of the day. So I mean, I use it very cautiously and very consciously. So even we who say we always try to say one nation, one thing is a bad thing, diversity and all that. But then we are afraid to allow that political space for a political party, either in Karnataka or anywhere else, which tries to represent a certain segment which is non-Congress, non-BJP. So we tend to sort of clear up that space, and we are now, liberals are now very afraid, mortally afraid, that if you speak against Congress, oh, what is going to happen to us in 20? So that's a very dangerous situation to be in, and if you know exactly what's happening, 2014 on, that is exactly what Modi has exploited.
No, Modi has done this well at the parliamentary level, where JDS is insignificant almost.
Everything is going to add up. It's not insignificant. It's
No,
not
at the
but-
parliamentary level, I'm saying.
No, it's not insignificant. How is it insignificant when
What-
you're going to get 20% vote share?
Not at the parliamentary level, Sugata.
No, you're say for instance,
Huh.
say KCR,
Huh.
OIC, then a few other political parties. KCR has already sort of...
No,
left the JDS.
Sugata, we are digressing, we are moving away.
So we'll come back
You
to
know,
that.
I could debate with you further. I'm not really convinced, but just to move on, we'll come back. So issues aren't as salient as perhaps we make them out to be.
We
But,
in the sense?
Readers, people sitting here. Fair enough, yeah. Readers, me also. So, and
Point about what she commented,
Which
that the
comment?
corruption not being an issue.
huh,
If anti-incumbency is an abstract sense of an unease, and this Lokniti data, I don't know if you've seen it, they said unemployment came first, price rise second, corruption third. Corruption was 7%, this was 17 and 11, I think.
Corruption was at the bottom,
Corruption was at the bottom.
4%.
And the interesting correlation was 51% of the respondents felt corruption had grown up exponentially, and 7% felt it was a problem. And this was interesting to see the thing. But I think it's a combined sense of unease. I mean, analytically you can say A, B, C, but I can't imagine someone saying unemployment is a problem, but price rise is not. I think they all go together, and this is a problem of survey data wanting to pin down 1, 2, 3, 4. I think they all work in tandem because they all add up to make life difficult. And those of us who have to interact with the government offices at whichever level, you will have run into the 40% phenomenon. And it can't not matter. It is surely mattering.
Asha,
But we should
you
see-
want to
we should-
respond to that?
No, I'm being very practical. When I go to the field,
Huh.
across the state, what I'm seeing, I'm talking. I'm not talking in terms of, research data. I told you, in a constituency like Chamarajanagar, you have Lingayat, there everybody is trying to cash in on that. So finally, to which Lingayat, if there are two candidates, let us say, so then they go to, as he's pointed out, subcaste. Are you? I'm sorry, I can't remember those subcastes also, but I make sure that I write it properly. So that is how they filter, okay, or Namore early, finally. So yesterday in Varuna it happened, and I met at the entry of Varuna, there's one shop, coffee shop, Uppara community. It's a very minuscule minority. In Chamarajanagar and that area you get that community. So Uppara, Putrang Shetty. In Varuna, one shop owner was telling me he doesn't belong to Mr. Siddaramaya's caste. But he said, I trust this leader because he has been my representative for ages. I have every reason to trust him rather than an outsider. A few kilometers we moved towards Suttur. A hotel owner, from last 35 years, he has been favoring BJP. He said, I don't care whether the Swamiji sitting there do politics or not, but for me, this party, because I belong to BJP and Lingaites inseparable. Me and BJP inseparable. So many factors work. So many things work.
This statement, if we could sort of probe this
You
further,
said you don't concur with my views, but
which one?
that's the first in the opening I said, no, these three factors, finally, I saw an educated, I have video. I went to Varuna. One doctor is campaigning there. Look at the narratives have not changed. In Kannada, he was telling, nim tatteliro anna kitkonbiಡ್ತಾರೆ ಹೊಸಬ್ರು MLA ಬಂದ್ರೆ. That means somebody will snatch away your food. He's not
MLA.
giving, if X candidate comes, he will get more rice. He's not saying, what you have, you will lose. ನಿಮ್ಮ ಮೇಲೆ ಬಲ್ ಪೂರಿತಾ ಇದೆಯಲ್ಲ.
If Siddaramaya gets elected, he will...
No, people are understanding, I know. So he was telling...
I'm not understanding.
Off the record, I will tell you.
Okay,
and then ನಿಮ್ಮ ತಲೆ ಮೇಲೆ ಬಲ್ಬ್ ಉರಿತಾ ಇದೆ, ಕತ್ಲೆಗೆ ಹೊಟ್ಟೋಗ್ತೀರಾ ನೀವು. ನಾವು ಬಂದರೆ 200 ಮೆಗಾವ್ಯಾಟ್ ಕೊಡ್ತೀವಿ, ಫ್ರೀಯಾಗಿ ಕೊಡ್ತೀವಿ ನಿಮಗೆ. He showed one half constructed house, a poor lady's house. It was half constructed. He said, ಈ ಮನೆ ನೋಡಿ, ಇದು ಯಾಕೆ ಕಂಪ್ಲೀಟ್ ಆಗಿಲ್ಲ? ಈಗ ನಿಂತಿದ್ದಾರಲ್ಲ ಕ್ಯಾಂಡಿಡೇಟು, ಅವ್ರು ಬಂದುಬಿಟ್ರೆ ನಿಮಗೆ ಅದು ಕಂಪ್ಲೀಟೇ ಆಗಲ್ಲ, ನಮ್ಗೆ ಕೊಡಿ. ಸೊ ದೀಸ್ ಕೈಂಡ್ ಆಫ್ ನೆಗೆಟಿವ್, why do you have to vote for me, you talk? You are an educated, you are you represent a different culture and, generation. The debate is still the old, this one, roti kapda makan. I was so disappointed, I was taken aback, You seek votes, on these things, but there should be some dignity to also to people. When you talk like this, half of the voters may not believe. It is not that they believe. The moment the caravan moved, 2 or 3 ladies, they said, ಇವರಪ್ಪ ಇದನ್ನೇ ಹೇಳ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದಾರೆ, ನಾನು ಇವ್ರಿಗೆ ವೋಟ್ ಹಾಕೋದು. ಬಟ್ the same thing, they are both father and son both saying the same thing. I don't trust them, but still I will vote. That's because I belong to his community. So it boils down to that, They know that they are not getting what they want.
Chandan,
This is not at all to disagree the importance of caste and cash and the third thing that you mentioned, culture.
No, I'm talking from the field, what is happening. No. But ideally, this should not be the narration.
I think it's perfectly natural that they all predominate in the sense that it's a lived reality. And one caste, like you said, doesn't only stand in for the welfare of that caste community alone.
The leader, the MLA doesn't have anti-incumbency in terms of development work. People love him. They say that ಅವರು ತುಂಬಾ ಕೆಲಸ ಮಾಡಿದ್ದಾರೆ, Mr. Siddaramaya. They say that he has done a lot of things. But suddenly, somewhere the discussion again goes back to ಏನು ಮಾಡವ್ರೆ. So, Dr. Parameshwar, one of the most, we can call it him gentleman politician from Tumkur. He was deputy chief minister also. When I interviewed him, I was telling, what voters want is, their wants have become too personalized. I don't want to elaborate on that, he said. In my interview, I think you must have read.
Yeah.
He said, I'll give them cement road. I'll give them what, if you go to Kortegere, you don't find any lakune there. You will find, it's a beautiful city, you have cemented road where water doesn't percolate to ground. You have good drainage system. You have schools, you have colleges, you have hospital. Everything is pakka. But the candidate is finding it very difficult. He says, it is so personalized there. They say, okay, raste madidri, ಏನು ಮಾಡ್ತೀರಾ, ನಮ್ಗೇನು ಮಾಡಿದ್ದೀರಾ? What does it mean? So there are a whole number of issues. It is not just one issue which decides an election. So many.
Very interesting.
So many things,
You've complicated this discussion
It's
tremendously.
not complicating. Karnataka elections are like this. You can,
No, if
it's
there are
always posture.
myriad issues, you know, then it becomes extremely difficult. You put up a very funny Facebook post, you know, ಗೆಲ್ತಾರೆ ಸೋಲ್ತಾರೆ ಕಷ್ಟ ಇದೆ ಇನ್ನೊಂದು ಯಾವುದು ಫೈಟ್ ಇದೆ ಸೊ ನೋಡೋಣ ಸೊ ದೀಸ್ ಆರ್ ದ ಕೈಂಡ್ ಆಫ್ ರೆಸ್ಪಾನ್ಸಸ್ ಬಿಕಾಸ್ ವೆನ್ ಯು ಗೋ ಔಟ್ ಟು ರಿಪೋರ್ಟ್ ಐ ಮೀನ್ I burst out laughing because you speak to someone and these are the 4 or 5 sort of standard responses they give with tremendous authority, right? So Asha's statement, I mean, shows that there are several myriad factors weighing in on a voter, and it's
I will just add one thing. In case of Koratagere, voters or public said, ತುಂಬ ಕೆಲಸ ಆಗಿದೆ, ಏನೂ ನಮಗೇನು ತೊಂದರೆ ಆಗಿಲ್ಲ, ಎವ್ರಿಥಿಂಗ್ ಇಸ್ ಡನ್. ದೆನ್ ಇಲ್ಲ, ಇಲ್ಲಿ ನಮ್ಮ ದೇವೇಗೌಡರ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ನಮಗೆ, ಕುಮಾರಣ್ಣನ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ನಮ್ಗೆ ತುಂಬ ಆಸೆ ಇದೆ. ಸೊ MLA, ಸಿಟ್ಟಿಂಗ್ MLA ವಿಲ್ ಫೈಂಡ್ ಇಟ್ ಡಿಫಿಕಲ್ಟ್ ಆನ್ ವಾಟ್ ಬೇಸಿಸ್ you decide. Again, it boils down to. It's not a question of how can it be anti-incumbency. If a person has done well in Koratagere, there is no anti-incumbency. It is a question of other factors.
Chandan, you know, Sugata made this point about how stagnant vote shares and each party is striving for 2 or 3 or 4% increase. So BJP's game plan, I mean, BJP has aggressively tried to breach the South Karnataka stronghold contested between JDS and Congress traditionally, where the BJP has very limited presence. You wrote a detailed article about this. I know that you've been thinking about this. So do you think that the BJP will make any gains in South Karnataka, rural South Karnataka?
We are really talking of a couple of districts, not all of South Karnataka. If you think of Bangalore, Mysore.
No, I'm not. I'm leaving. I said rural South Karnataka.
Sorry.
So old Mysore, traditional old Mysore. Let's say, if you want me to be more specific, Mandya, Hassan are the strongholds of the JDS. Then Ramnagara, which is, you know, where Congress has a little presence and JDS is there. And then you have Tumkuru, where BJP has 1 seat. You know, so across this belt of South Karnataka, Mysuru, rural Mysuru, you know, so basically, if I have to rephrase the question, the BJP has made aggressive attempts. You know, you've discussed this in detail. I've written about this. Kempe Gowda statue, the Tipu Sultan killers fiasco. Ashwath Narayan says, I'll go and build a Ram temple, where there's a small Rama temple in Ramnagara. So we know all this is happening. Do you think they'll be successful at all?
All of these 3 big attempts you mentioned are not going to get them any dividends this time for sure. I mean, they're trying what they can, but it's not working. It also shows you the limits of their imagination, actually. I mean, in terms of how do you really appeal to an electorate. And if you look at their, see, they don't have a Vokkaliga leader of any stature. Ashwath Narayan is trying to become one, and we don't know what will happen. And in those areas, if you look at their own candidates, they're either people with the JDS past or a Congress past. They don't have their own local leaders, and this is pretty much true for most constituencies in the state. So why are they not making inroads? The Chikmagalur Vokkaligas, no, they went over to the BJP fairly easily. Even the Tirthalli Shumaga region also. I mean, if you're talking of a caste in particular. But here, I'm not saying they're invulnerable to the Hindutva imagination. But it looks like it still seems alien to them. It does not seeming local to them. Them meaning the Mandya, Hassan region. But I think the Modi allure exists outside of the Hindutva allure. But still the identification of Devegowda as the Vokkaliga leader and the party as their party, I think trumps all of these things successfully. Okay. But this is also enabled by, let's say, a leader like Siddaramaiah, who was fairly open about his disdain for these leaders, which was bad news for Congress. Congress legislators were groaning, complaining, right, that we'd rather not have such.
Can you just expand on that?
No, I mean, if you think of symbolic things, when he became chief minister, he got Devegowda's photo removed from his office. Something you would not do. I mean, there were many of these things that he was openly saying, not just about Devegowda, and everyone knew that his loathing for Vokkaligas and other dominant castes was a visceral one. And he was not trying to be diplomatic about keeping it private. and presenting this cosmopolitan face. I mean, he's very in-your-face person. So that earned him the popularity among the lower castes. He did emerge as a backward caste.
Ahinda.
But then, but then again, there were many Vokkaligas who didn't quite mind it. They were okay with him still, and we can't put a figure to this.
But I mean,
but sorry,
Vokkaligas
the
also
question-
have similar sort of contempt for Siddaramaiah. I mean, maybe not manifested, but in conversations it's evident. So it goes both
I
ways.
think Sugata should probably take.
No, see, the Okkaliga is also not a flat electorate.
Correct.
Chandan pointed out something very interesting. All the elite Zaripeta Okkaligas are not with Janata Dal. They have sort of capsized into the BJP thing. So now look at Chikmagalur and Shimoga, which he pointed out. None of them are strongly with Deve Gowda, who has a very kind of earthy image. Right? So that is one thing. And even within, when you are talking about Siddaramaiah and do they loathe, and see, that's a very huge factor. If you look at the 2014 general elections, when Vishwanath contested Mysore, I remember that thing because Vishwanath lost in the last minute. He was slated to win. He lost because the last 3 meetings he spoke against Deve Gowda in a kind of language which was not acceptable. So that day I happened to be with Siddaramaiah and he said he's losing. I asked him to shut up, not to talk about the Okkaligas. He has gone and spoken. And Vishwanath belongs to Siddaramaiah's community. And you should know the sociological thing about Kurubas and Okkaligas and the separation and all that. See, they sometimes share the same surname. A Kuruba can also be a Gowda. And until the 80s, there was no splintering of this. There were overlapping identities in Tumkur or other places. That community was overlapping. And Deve Gowda had captured that thing beautifully. Tippeswamy, the man who will give his life to Deve Gowda, is a Kuruba. Okay? And if you also, why Deve Gowda played that Kuruba thing beautifully till about 90s when they sort of started emerging with a different identity. And Karnataka has seen this unique sociological phenomena where the backwards and the Dalits and the oppressed Dalits and the untouchables, everybody has a mutt and a pontiff and a seminary. So that is a later development. But then the Okkaligas aspired to become like Lingayats. This aspiration existed right from the time of the Vadiyar, when the Leslie Miller Commission report came and all that. Because they were more organized, they had a structure. If you look at the Lingayats, there are listed, I'm just speaking about the listed mutts, there are about 2,600 mutts. 2,600 mutts spread across Karnataka, out of which about 750 are very active.
And ancient also.
And ancient, a few centuries old. And if you actually see, a little more closely, you'll see that 4 or 5 mutts are very powerful across Karnataka. Suttur, then the guy who's in jail now, what's his name? Muruga Rajendra, then Musa Urmat.
Gatak.
They are very, very rich with thousands of acres of property. And of course, because they captured political power, they captured a 14% community could not have ruled Karnataka for 40 years without even the Okkaligas being able to intervene. That is from the time 1956 to 1994 when Deve Gowda becomes the chief minister. 40 years, Karnataka does not see a Okkaliga despite the fact that they are concentrated, they are delivering numbers and all of that. So, this, even when we speak of Okkaligas, Kurubas and the caste kind of a thing, you should know that there are certain areas where they overlap. And now, another very interesting thing that has happened in the last 10 years is the subcasting has come into place so much. And ever since Deve Gowda was defeated in 2019 in Tumkur, now he has made it his mission to get the Kunchetiga Okkaligas, the subcaste, into the central OBC list. So he is a Gangadkar, but he is trying to get them into that. So It's a long-term plan. I mean, all Okkaligas, I should be the person who's commanding the entire thing. But there you see that thing. If you look at all the Bangalore Okkaligas who have been elected, they are a completely different subset. Ashwath Narayan or Krishna Gowda. I don't know what subset you are, I won't ask. So all these people, you look more like a Chikmagalur elite. Huh? Okay. Yeah.
He's a pant.
Just joking.
Professor Muzaffar Asadi uses the pejorative phrase pant Vokkaliga and chaddi Vokkaliga to distinguish. So Chandan would be the Chikmagalur pant Vokkaliga.
Now RSS people have also started wearing pants. So you can't.
No, I asked him, can I write this? This sounds provocative. This sounds provocative. So he said, no, go ahead. And he came here and he used that phrase also, I think. No, but
real estate becoming whatever it's become. People who live close on the outskirts of Bangalore, Kolar, Nelamangla, Yelahanka, these people became huge crorpatis, and they are the Vokkaligas who are here if they are there. So it's not.
I think we are running out of time. I just wanted to ask Asha another question, because you interviewed Jagdish Shettar.
1 second. This gentleman was asking about Vokkaliga, and in Varuna there are 14,000 Vokkaligas, approximately. We don't have a caste census since 1932. We are extrapolating whatever caste factors, numbers we have. So there, the Congress has given up getting maybe 1 or 2%. That's all.
Of the
Vokkaligas. It's that divided. Yeah.
No, the question, because you interviewed Jagdish Shettar, and he's made this claim, after my departure, BJP will suffer in 20 or 25 seats in that Kittur, Karnataka region. What is your sense? Because you traveled around that region as well. What are the voters saying? Do you really think Shettar's departure will mean that some of the Lingayats will abandon the BJP?
It has disturbed BJP because it has to put its house in order again, because it banged on Shettar for long, he was made chief minister. But if he was that influential leader, BJP would have not let him go. It's simple calculation. They do their arithmetics very well, as I have seen. So, according to Congress, 2% swing in some constituencies it may give.
In that Kittur, Karnataka region?
No, in that northern Karnataka. Northern Karnataka, if you take.
Okay.
So, he's not that tall leader like Yediyurappa could not, KJP, as a KJP head, he could not win. But he definitely disturbed BJP to such an extent, it has just got 40 seats. But Shettar is not that kind of a leader. Basically he keeps to his constituency. That's the...
That she's pointing out that he's not very influential or whatever is again the subcaste case. See, the BJP has not blindly allowed him to go away. In fact, the Lokniti data shows that all the Lingayats, 67% of them are sticking with the BJP. I don't know if it's correct, but then that's a kind of pointer that we have.
BJP is the identity.
What are the Lokniti data from 2018, pre-election?
This is the latest that we did a show
after Shettar's ouster.
After Shettar's exit. So that's the latest data that we have. 67% was sticking to the BJP. So even if you sort of discount 10% or whatever, it still looks like it's intact. That is the reason is the BJP calculated, see they gave them this internal reservation, 2D reservation to Panchamsalis. See, if you know the background, Panchamsalis were the most populous Lingayats, but never could, get political power as much as the Banajigas were enjoying it. And Banajigas are the trading community.
Yediyurappa belongs to...
Yeah. And see, another very interesting fact there is, of the 9 Lingayat chief ministers you've had, except for Bommai and senior and junior Bommai, who are Sadar Lingayats, everybody else has been a Banajiga Lingayat. So you look at how they have rigged the entire thing. The most populous, the most, poor Lingayats have not had a shot at power. So BJP has given them reservation now.
No, but they don't have internal reservation. It's, it's part of Lingayats.
See, but
They've
the
just
intention-
increased the proportion.
No, correct, boss. 2D reservation was specifically meant for them. That is why in Shiggaon they were protesting, and this fellow said, I swear on my mother I'll give it to you, and then the Belgaum session became a fiasco. All of that, see, the entire maneuvering was to save his face. Whether you give 2% later, 2% here, the intention is very clear. They even felicitated him.
I understand.
The Panchamsalis
No, but the
felicitated
simple
him.
point I'm
No,
making
the point
is there's no internal reservation. That's all I was saying.
you call it by whatever name you want. But it is a
But
kind
there
of...
is still an apprehension that the Banajigas would take the large chunk of the reservation.
No. Forget, no. They have been given it under a different category. The 2% extra is separate.
Are you sure? Chandan, do you agree with this? Because
Okay, so the Panchamsalis, as Sugata reminded us, are more than 50% of the Lingayats. And their populace. Yatnal is a Panchamsali, which is why Yatnal can say whatever the hell he wants. The BJP will not do anything to
They've been
him
only abusing
because
Yadurappa.
he is their leader. And this Panchamsali Swamiji was sat on hunger strike in Bangalore for almost 2 weeks, demanding 15% reservation. More than a year. And then when they announced 2%, the next day he's saying he's welcoming it, which is bizarre. You wanted 15% all these months, and now you're saying thank you for 2%. That's because Yatnal made him say that. The very next day, the Mata issued a clarification. No, actually, we're not happy with 2%. But no one is listening at that point. The photo op is over. The India conclave was prominent. This Swamiji was sitting right there alongside the other BJP leaders.
Mrityunjay Swamiji.
Yeah. So they have managed all this, which is why now everyone is certain that what was expected to be a big loss in terms of seats among the Lingayat dominated areas after these two leaders left, Sawadhi and Shettar, now is looking like it's not much of a loss at all. In electoral terms, the only loss, which I think is a significant loss, seems on the psychological level of a community not feeling super secure that this party will be here for us. And this is a pan-state feeling, and one of them even put a figure to it that there could be a 3% vote shift from the Lingayats across the state as a result of this feeling of what are these guys doing. But we need to see.
No, that's why day before yesterday, Mr. Amit Shah, when he was in Chamarajanagar, he positioned Mr. Somanna as he announced that he will get the topmost post. Till then he had not announced. Immediately next day Mr. Siddaramaiah said, Lingayat. This is Lingayat. Yeah, he's not. So next day Mr. Siddaramaiah said, even I have chances to become CM. Because that is a selling point on the field. If you are a chief ministerial candidate, you get more votes. That is till Mr. Amit Shah announced, nobody in BJP had said so-and-so is a CM candidate. He almost positioned him. But if the same person goes to some other region where Vokaligas are more in number, he may say that, this time we may come out with a different. So, the region also, where you stand and what you talk matters a lot. We were discussing about this, if at all JDS had broadened its base over the decades, probably we would have had a stronger regional party. BJP is experimenting. In Kanakpura, Vokaliga has been asked to test his Ashok. In Varuna and that is Mysore area, a Lingayat has been asked to see. This is they may not be expecting huge results, in terms of numbers. They may not, but they are making efforts because next Lok Sabha election, they are keeping that in mind. You need to broad base here. Otherwise, it's same Lingayats, same Vokaliga party, same Lingayat party. The BJP is making concerted effort to extend its domain. This election results will show whether in the last 5 years, whether BJP has made any serious effort to grow in, whether it has come out of its comfort zone. Same thing, Congress, which used to be doing very well across the state, the region-wise data when we take, it will show whether Congress has really, if it has made positive efforts, cashing on BJP's negatives is not elections. You need to broad base your party.
But like Sugata pointed out, Congress waits for the opposition to make mistakes to make gains. It's not a positive narrative, it's a...
The other point, she made a very important point. See, the Congress or the JDS, she said JDS has not expanded its base. But if you look at the 2004 election when they got 60 seats and really good, the Kurubas were with them and the Valmikis were with them. See, after that election, Yediyurappa becomes a huge factor. And now, why is Siddaramaiah struggling to get a constituency for himself? The reason is, he has only played his caste. And although he calls himself a Ahinda leader, the Dalits are not with him. The left Dalits, who are again very populist, are voting BJP. The most oppressed Dalits are with the BJP, right? The right Dalits are very unhappy. They probably will be with Parmeshwar or Kharge to an extent.
Elite Dalits
Yeah.
there.
So that is gone. Now come to the minorities. Minorities, it's always splintered between JDS to an extent and with the Congress. But again, if this time, if there is a tacit understanding between OIC, KCR, Deve Gowda and SDPI. SDPI is contesting, I think, 54 seats or something.
16, no?
60, I don't know. I don't
Certainly
remember.
not 54.
160.
They announced and they probably did not fight. Something happened.
Yeah.
Something happened. So if that happens, and if it's a low margin election and they take away 3,000 votes or 4,000 votes in the Hyderabad Karnataka region, then what is going to be the Congress number is my question. Because Congress, again, so Siddaramaiah, your Muslim thing, Alpasankhyattaru is taken out of his cachet, Dalits is taken out, now backward class.
Only with Kurupas.
But no, I'll tell you, I'll give you the Kuruba thing also. How many castes are there in the OBC list in Karnataka? 108? Now 108?
108.
And now how many of them are with Congress? Portion of the Idigas? The bigger Idigas in the coastal districts have moved to BJP. Kurubas are there. Rest of the Upparas, she mentioned Upparas, the salt making community, they are all with BJP. This was the social engineering that Yediyurappa managed fantastically in a shortcut manner. There were two experiments that have happened in Karnataka in the consolidation of backwards. One is the Devarajara's experiment, where he went and really mobilized. And so therefore a Veerap Moily becomes a chief minister, Kharge is almost there, and then Dharam Singh, Bangarappa, all these people become, because he's actually bringing communities together with a certain kind of program. But what happened later with Yediyurappa is, he set up a mutt for everybody, gave them money, 5 acres, 5 crores, and earned the loyalty of the community.
From the state budget.
And from the state budget, precisely. So there is a certain shortcut. So Siddaramaiah, with just the Kuruba thing, and Kuruba vote is also fractured there. The Congress gets a bit of it and all that. The JDS gets a bit, Congress, and also, a very minute percentage goes to the BJP and all that. So there, the whole problem is, now he's called a Ahinda leader. And now tell me what community is behind him, or who votes for the Congress. Is there one community that the Congress can stand up and say, like the BJP says, that the Lingayats or the majority of the Lingayats are with us, or the majority of the Okkaligas are with us, or say 108 castes listed on the OBC list of the Karnataka thing are with us? Then can they confidently say minorities are with us? Probably 2-3% of the Christians may look at it that way, but they also do strategic voting. So when this is the case, the numbers that are put out every day is contingent and dependent on how the opposition fares. Not that what she said is absolutely right.
Yeah.
None of the parties try to expand their base with a constructive agenda across 5 years. They were all, happy making their money. This 40% nonsense that has come out, there is no evidence to it. It was made by a contractors association fellow, which you know, and you know how contractors play it out. It has become a rhetoric which the media also picked up, and a lot of things happened, and for once the Congress propaganda was better than the BJP propaganda.
Correct, yeah.
That's all. So that 40%, and you should know one last thing. Both caste and corruption. You may look at it independently and say, "Arey, this is identity," but they're also an economy. Caste is an economy because in a small place, in a district center or a taluka center or a hobli, a mutt feeds people, a mutt gives employment, a mutt gives education. So there is a kind of organic connection. A lot of 20th century's big Kannada writers, we're all affiliated with mutt, Siddhganga mutt or some other mutt, Mursavara mutt. Mansoor, Mallikarjun Mansoor, sang the most beautiful morning song for the Mursavara mutt Swamiji. So, why I'm trying to tell you this is she used the word culture. So that's a completely different debate. Why, certain areas vote in a certain way. I'm not speaking of resort culture here. I'm speaking about a far more deeper idea. So they're also economy. They're linked organically to a lot of your livelihood issues. So caste plays that role, and also corruption, because I went to this Nilgiri's election after the 2G scam broke in Delhi, the Raja thing. And people in his constituency, he said, "Oh, are you kicking out this fellow this time?" They said, "Arey, why should we? He has made more money, he'll give us more money." See, the logic is of a very different nature. And we don't understand that. We try to, even in Karnataka, even in Bangalore, a cosmopolitan center, I remember the Nandan Nilekani election. Nandan, in his final leg of campaign, had to go looking for the Okkaliga vote, which was concentrated. They were all from one particular area of Mandya, from Nagmangla. They were all concentrated in that Banshankari area. And Ambarish was unwell. Ambarish was flown down to campaign for Nandan in that area so that vote comes solidly to Nandan. So this is the reality of the whole thing.
Thank you, Sugata. I think we'll open it up for questions. We have
a quick one-line thing. See, the government now gives a lot of money to mathas, right? Hundreds of crores. There are caste development corporations. Many of them have been. Now, what happens to a matha as a result of becoming, a receiver of government grants? It's just not a neutral act. It's a partisan of a party has sent you money.
Absolutely.
So what are the quid pro quos? What does it mean? Look at how many Lingayat mathas have protested the expulsion of these leaders. Not one.
For Yedurappa they came.
Yedurappa they came. Because he is the one who's giving them the money.
They all met him in jail, no? When he was in prison, Mr.
So there's a way
Yediyurappa.
in which they have lost this kind of autonomy, even locally, talking of local economics. But I think it's a big question. Is the BJP actually pummeling them down by giving them money? That's a question I would like to just let us, bear in mind.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. We'll open it up for questions. Sorry. So Kabir, you want to comment on what's important to you when you go out to vote? Because this is the first time vote.
Okay. So I think Can
you just introduce yourself? We don't know you on the panel.
So my name is Kabir Burman. I live in Sajapur. I'm 19 right now, and this will be the first time I'm voting. And going into voting, I knew that, so as a student, I've been engaged in the public policy circles in particular non-profits that are based on voter engagement and things like that. And so I knew that when the state elections were coming up, that I did want to go out and actually exercise my right to vote. But I also knew that, when it came to the right to vote, I also kind of considered it a privilege. So I wanted to make sure that I was informed going into the election itself. Now that in itself became a huge issue because a lot of the community around me, in terms of my friends, in terms of my family, they aren't really that engaged in local politics. National politics itself is a challenge. Local politics, they forget it. So I think first, in my first efforts to actually understand who I was voting for, kind of became a challenge, and there in itself, I saw my first issue. You know, in your public policy circles, you hear of factors like urban apathy and things like that, but to actually see it, you know, within my own family was something that really took me aback. And therefore, I kind of like actually went ahead and got a lot of my own family and friends to sign up to the voter electoral rolls, which was a process in itself. But I think that's kind of what I was trying to do with these elections. And since then, I have kind of tried to understand what my candidates are obviously standing for in terms of policy, more than, let's say, issues of caste and religion, because that's what I want to focus on as a voter. And therefore, I've been trying to understand that through their manifestos, through their speeches, and through their interactions that I've had in my constituency.
Now we open it up to questions.
Thank you, Kabir. We'll manage it now.
Thanks for that, Kabir. I hope it was fun sort of trying to understand what these various candidates were of. What constituency? This is Sarjapur.
So I'm from the Mahadevpura
Mahadevpura.
constituency, which in itself is a very interesting constituency right now, because I'm sure you've seen the news. Last year, the entire constituency was basically flooded, and that's basically become the big election issue. I'm from Rainbow Drive, which was all over the news in terms of being completely underwater. And we've had the MLAs since come in pleading for our votes, saying that, you know, we'll take care of you.
His wife is the candidate now.
Yes. Interestingly enough, Mr. Limbavli currently has an FIR registered against him, and therefore he wasn't granted a ticket. So now we have
you've
his...
done your research. That's very
Well, I've
good.
tried. So now we have his wife standing in his place, but of course there is the concern that she will be a placeholder candidate.
Yeah.
So we are slightly concerned about that, but then we're also looking at alternatives in terms of the Congress candidate and things like that. So.
Thank you, thank you. So questions can also be directed to Kabir. Yeah. You're going to pass the mic around. Yes. Yeah, Viju had a question.
From the discussion, and specifically Chandan, you mentioned that that more or less everything you're saying shows a lack of imagination by most of the parties. If you were, directing the strategy of each of the three major parties, what would be your, not just in the short term, over the last 5 years, what would you have done?
Since you've given me this opportunity to answer, if I were telling I would ask the BJP to shed its, his fundamental core commitment to establishing this as a Hindu country. I mean, of course, I would not be in the party the very next minute, but this is what I would ask them to do. Otherwise, there's no other way in which they can even proceed. Sorry? Oh, sorry. No, he asked me what I would advise each of the parties. Yeah, I mean, it has to change its core commitment.
Repeat what you said.
What should it change in Hindu Rashtra?
I'm repeating it with other words. Okay, so...
You can say that.
So anyway, Amu, what I said was, if I had to advise the BJP at all, I would and if they give me, if we're presuming they're open to listening, I would ask them to, a categorical commitment to, no, actually Tushita, you may be surprised. I don't think a lot of the supporters are comfortable with this. I think a sanction is, no. A Hindu nation without violence would take them much further than where Hindutva with violence has. Anyway, this is my... So there's no scope really for advice giving unless that fundamental thing is open to being reconsidered. I must say that if you look at the manifesto, no one takes the manifesto seriously because they're released a few days before the elections, but the core promises are already, being disseminated many weeks before. The JDS manifesto as well as the Congress manifesto actually show an engagement with local issues. I mean, apart from the big highlighted ones, if you look at the fine details, I mean, there is thought. And how many of them, anyway, so the big thing for the Congress, I think it has to get a grip on what it means to be a secular party in symbolic terms, in conceptual terms, and in strategic terms as well. because we know the problems all too well. It's like a sleight of hand. We're secular and we're not. We're secular, we don't know what it is. It's really strange. With the JDS, I think it's comfortable becoming the JDS, I think, is evolved with a kind of a purging of its own, of a lot of big leaders that had worked for it. And its model was the DMK. I think it wanted to be a family-led party and expects everyone to feel comfortable with that non-negotiable fact of family control. In a way, DMK has a place in Tamil Nadu, and it's trying to do that. So now I think that looks like a non-negotiable thing. But as far as ideology goes, I think it has to really think what it means to be a regional party, apart from making gestures about Kannada or about farmers or about Karnataka, about Nandini, all of which are real issues, but I think you need a driving vision, which is more substantially worked out than what you have now, the shreds. Similarly with Congress, I think Congress is trying to now grapple with federalism in a way you hadn't seen it grappled with before. I hope it's of a very full-blooded grappling. What does it mean to be a national party committed to federalism? And then I think it has to rethink some of its prior embrace of neoliberal economics, which we're not entirely clear. Manmohan Singh is still their poster boy, and I remember most of us were attacking Manmohan Singh when he was Prime Minister against the Dunkel draft, and we didn't like the fact that he was from the World Bank, all of that. And I think the farm crisis, you can actually trace it if you do a long durée analysis of how it evolved. So I think it has to really have a clear sense for how to, and this is something that I think all parties need to do, a sense of the urban-rural interrelation. Right now, all the economists, even the good kind economists, think cities are the future. And in fact, the DMK actually has a committee to plan for how Tamil Nadu has to manage its inevitable 100% urban future. Already, and Tamil culture, and it talks about Dravidian culture, and for me it's bizarre. What is Dravidian culture without villages in Tamil Nadu? So there are all these sorts of things, and I think Tagore, Tagore saw a harmony between the city and the countryside in a way that Marxists simply haven't been able to. The Marxists think the European capitalist story is the universal capitalist story where the towns and villages are inevitably in a contradictory relationship, and cities are the way to go. I think this particular relationship, for me, takes on a very big
Thank you.
significance. Sorry, Vikhar, I lost sense of
Slightly utopian, very beautiful, fantastic. But this relationship between towns and cities with a focus on smart cities and, with a migration from rural to urban, I mean, daily thousands of people are migrating to Bangalore. Slightly utopian. I'm being skeptical, that's all.
Just one
but
second.
Viju gave you the opportunity to fantasize, so, so full rights to you. No, Chandan will
Vikhar,
move on.
one
Chandan.
sentence.
We'll get
one sentence. What the economists talk of transferring the surplus population from the villages to cities. I don't know. It can be a way in which a brother can remain in the village and another brother can work in the city. I'm putting it in simplistic terms, but truly possible. What Sugata talked about, the Amrish coming here to vote. It's not just a fact. Those people celebrate festivals there. They go back. They probably half of them vote in the villages. It's a very different city-village relationship here. Yeah.
I'm assuming that the Lokniti survey was reasonably, quote unquote, okay. One of you mentioned the thing that unemployment was a major factor. The other major factor was poverty. And again, assuming that that's...
Price rise.
Sorry? Price rise. Poverty was a separate thing from price rise. And both of them together amounted to more than 50%. Once again, assuming that that is reasonably okay and not ignoring all these micro factors that you talked about, all of you talked about, is there any space for those things to be reflected in not just the vote share, but in terms of candidates winning?
Who is this question for? Chandan, Sugata?
Well, actually, Chandan is getting a lot of attention. I want to give him a little more because during the TV debate, he was being cut off continuously.
Thank you for the redistributive.
But I'd also like Sugata to comment on this if he wants to. Also.
Sugata, just short answers. Yeah, this is
The unemployment and poverty being major and price rise ought to be added to that.
being reflected in voter behavior.
Yeah, I mean, it's
These
a class war.
grievances, huh?
That's class count, right? That's
So
the
it's
question.
No. These grievances, are they reflected in voter behavior?
Yeah, it does.
It does.
It does in some ways, in sense we may not be able to put our finger on it and say this is the exact way in which it is getting reflected, because a lot of other factors which we have discussed through the debate here gets added up. It's very difficult to sort of split it up and say this is going to do this, because a constituency, if you look at, it would be very instructive or very educative to look at how each constituency is formed. In Karnataka, why nobody sort of can ignore the smaller castes is because of the demographic spread. So if a Lingayat has to win, he needs two supporting caste communities to elect him. So there are so many other factors that come in at that point of time. And I think Asha mentioned this earlier, which is the Dalit constituencies. Even there will be poverty issues, there will be, everything. But then again, the large chunk of the vote is controlled by the upper caste people. So there are several factors playing in there. And yes, there is this whole thing being injected and put out in the media every day. So there is certainly an impact, and price rise is very real. And therefore the Congress responded to that with a whole bunch of welfare measures. The Pancharatra Yatra, which has got very little attention, I think is far more sounder than the Congress platform. And Kumaraswamy has gone around the state twice, and the kind of success he has seen is amazing, which is not obviously getting reported in the newspapers or television, because they have made it a bipolar fight, because it's easier. Diversity is always a cost, right? So it's very easier to say this fellow is fighting that fellow. So that is you have not paid attention to that. But both the parties, Janata Dal and the Congress, have tried to address it in their own way.
So LPG price hike, that is an issue everywhere. You go to any constituency, it's being discussed. But whether that will set tone for voting, but people are, especially women, they say that kashta agta ide, tumba kashta agta ide. This morning my maid was also telling, she's a BJP bhakte. She said, this time illa anakala. It's a hurting the price.
No, but if you look at the Lok Niti, because you mentioned what Asha is saying, see again the beneficiaries, the government beneficiaries, state government and central government beneficiaries of welfare schemes seem to be on the side of the BJP, because they come back and say that it's worked wonderfully. So now we don't, that's an X factor. The Lok Niti, going by the Lok Niti data.
Thank you. Next question, please.
Hello. Good evening. I have a question for Kabir. With the occasion, I would like to congratulate him. I mean, if you're even slightly representative of your generation, this city and this country are in really good hands. Also, I sympathize with you a little bit because I'm relatively new to town. I'm here since a year. I represent a foreign country, and I've been also trying to have an idea of what the parties are proposing here, again, as a foreigner. The same, I've been trying to read and have an idea. And I would like to listen from you. So my question is, were you able to make up your mind in, not about who you will vote, but what different parties, at least the three main different parties, are proposing in a nutshell? And if not, would you rather vote based on the national level kind of ideology that they portray? Thank you.
Thank you for that question. I think by and large, when it comes to the issues that at least shape a lot of the voters in my generation, like this panel has discussed, a lot of the policy points that parties promise in their manifesto almost never actually materialize on the ground, right? I've also worked with plenty of NGOs and non-profits, and I've seen how, there is a lot of promise from the government in terms of, let's say, implementing certain policies. But when it actually comes to providing, let's say, funding, pivotal funding that would move that initiative forward, that's almost never happened. It always gets stuck with the middleman or something like that, and it falls on the NG to actually do the work. Having said that, even the bare promise from a party to actually address certain issues is a signal in the right direction for a voter like me. But when it came to the issues of, like, say, the nationalization of politics that we've seen, for my generation in particular, amongst the peers that I have, when they come to the decision of supporting a party, they do kind of take into account what the national party is talking about. So, for example, right now, a lot of my friends are considering, let's say, the queer narrative that's happening given the arguments in the Supreme Court. The fact that the BJP does have certain stances against it, that is a consideration that my generation is taking into account, even if it might not directly play into the state elections. So there are these broader issues that are being taken into account by my generation, and we are trying to kind of understand what issues we want to focus on. But yes, there is that cross-nationalization of politics and issues that we're looking at, if that answers your question.
That's a very eloquent way to put it, Kabir. Well done.
Thank you.
Udaya.
My question is, like, if you see the news channels...
Who is the question for?
To all, actually, all
to
the
all.
journalists.
Whoever wants can take it up.
So, many news channels and the print media, it looks like even they are fighting these elections for one party or the other party.
Sorry, they are also?
They are also fighting the elections for one party or the other party, looks like, because... So, the media houses, the print... Only one party?
The channels are fighting against one party.
So, how influential is it on the voters, actually, in the rural side at least?
So the impact of media's reportage of the elections
because you say that
on the electorate.
They are fighting for only one party. That looks
so who
like.
wants to take it up? Asha, Chandan, Sugata?
See, it is perception building. If it is, that's the thing we are discussing, then to a certain extent it will help, to form, like Bajrangi, how did it spread? But you have to take into consideration more than the conventional media, new media, social media, there also, so there a lot of impact is made. I don't think analysis are being read or editorials are making an impact now. That immediacy, social media is, trending, what trends, people go by that. So whether again that shape up there, if that is the deciding factor, what media writes, then no, it is not. Then we would have not had 2018 election results what we had. It's not, bias is always there, earlier also. Positive bias, negative bias, we see all sort of thing. But finally it is voters' call.
See, I mean, Chandan was saying it's a very important question because what is the impact on the reader? I feel, I've been an editor with the newspaper, magazine and television thing. And if you look at the readership drop, if you look at the, BARC ratings used to be a headache every week. If you look at what is happening there, the news universe has shrunk further. It's become a minuscule kind of a thing. So what these people do is they try to push their videos or whatever on YouTube or Facebook or Twitter or wherever. So that may have a small impact. That is, if you look at the organized, institutionalized kind of media thing. But I think they are also very, very intelligent. They know how to decipher these things. Now, you suddenly hold a mic to somebody in a rural place. He'll give you, 10 reasons why Modi is bad to this country, and it'll be very eloquent. So it's not that, there is something which is beyond the structured kind of operation that happens, where people know how to perceive, how to read the message, and how to sort of decipher the message as well. So that is local intelligence, local knowledge. And for the record, the local media, I mean, English media has always been that way. Local media is controlled by one upper caste and one subcaste of the upper castes. So if there's complete lack of diversity, which I've always argued has to be, you have to broad base that thing. Like there are no tickets given to Muslims in BJP. Similarly, you find very few minority reporters reporting sensitively in local media.
Hi. Thanks for the, thanks for the excellent panel. But I must say, I am where Sugata was at the beginning of the discussion. I don't know what are the issues that's going to impact this election. So my question is for each one of you, who are your personal picks for forming the next election, next government, sorry.
For the next government?
Forming the next government, who are you?
Party or the chief minister? You mean the governing party or the chief minister?
Okay, I mean, I will give you the options to answer both. Which is the party and who is going to be the chief minister?
Yeah, is it linked to that? Yeah. Tushita, please. Tushita, don't complicate it further.
No, I will just keep it very simple. But actually, this discussion was quite cynical and regressive because we are in 2023 and we only talked about caste, cash, resort culture, etc., frankly. So, and that is making Karnataka the Bihar of South India. Now, given that, and from what he said, that do you, anyone in the panel, have a party, or let's say that people will do anything to win an election, but after this, do you think there is someone who can or will focus on development or any real issues after this?
If there is political stability, we can definitely expect. If there is coalition, again, there will be problem.
I disagree with what Asha is saying. I mean, the other thing is, the other way to look at it, Tushita, is all that we have discussed in the last 1 hour are the invariables, variables. But there is a certain kind of a status quo development agenda which could be about irrigation. See, it's a 20-year, 30-year cycle. And there are certain welfare schemes. There are loans being got from, borrowed from World Bank to complete certain projects. For example, the Upper Krishna, canal system or something. So those are perennial things.
But they're not talked about.
No, they're not talked about in the sense they are talked about. If you go and listen to Gowda talking in Raichur, he will only talk about the canal system. If you go to Varuna and speak to Sidramaya, he'll be addressing that issue locally. It's just that the media does not pick it up. And also, you're right that it's all been very cynical. But also, idealism has sort of, collapsed in a certain way, and that's a global thing. Right? So probably Francis Fukuyama should write another essay, The End of Idealism or something like that.
Your question is what? See, these
Your
are
pick.
No. Amar, that's no. I live in Rajarajeshwari Nagar, so I leave the rest to you. Anyway.
You're certainly not voting.
No, but Tushita, I think you did the panel injustice by saying it was cynical. I think it was trying to be realistic about how things are on the ground and trying to see, silver linings, which I think you are not attentive to. I really feel. Anyway, but when I said I disagreed with her, I think the coalition, when I said the Maharashtra and the Bihar model and all, there's also the Kerala model, where you have LDF and UDF with 15 partners, and they don't collapse. They last the full 5 terms. It's just that they've evolved the art of managing a coalition, which Karnataka hasn't been able to do because of some grandiose notion of how one
maturity
party
lacking, that's the coalition is the best form of governance, according to me. I've written a research paper also on that, because there is you can have more say in that. It's not unilateral decisions there. You need to discuss, debate. But what happens is that power sharing becomes the issue.
Yes.
Then you, as a reporter, has suffered a lot when coalition government is there.
Yeah.
Oh
so
God.
We also have a neologism, right? Coalition dharma, which we haven't seen really working. But I think the aspiration exists. How do you bring about, we also have a coordination committee, Samanvaya Samiti, which never meets. I mean, this is a cynicism that we can't not note, but I really feel that's helpful.
So no one's brave
one's
enough on the
answered your
panel
question.
to respond to your question
Voting was a
directly.
private decision. Who will win?
No, he
It's just okay, before that, just a sort of segue. Quick word on your mention that the Dalit vote will go to the BJP. Just elaborate two points on that.
Going to the B, it's already gone. I mean, if you look
That's
at the
dangerous.
last voting percentages of since the 2008 elections, you know, the Madigas who have now been given internal reservation, I mean, I have gone with them, and the reason is again power sharing. The certain smaller section of the Dalits who were slightly better placed did not allow the others to sort of take over or did not share power with them. So that grouse was a 25-year-old grouse. So that has been addressed now with an internal reservation. This actually, the internal reservation thing was also an idea that the Supreme Court floated. The very last judgment of Arun Mishra was about internal reservation, saying that you can give internal reservation. And the first person to respond to that Supreme Court judgment was Deve Gowda. Because it was 2006, the original idea was Deve Gowda's. Because when Siddaramaiah went away from his party, he proposed that, you know, there should be internal reservation because the Kurubas are walking away with all the reservation. Right? So this whole idea of trying to, there are two things that can happen. One is you're arguing for greater social justice, but if you cut the pie so much, nobody would ever get anything. So these things, it's a kind of balance that's
extended. Sugata, she heard you to say that all Dalits are with the BJP. No, that's not what he said. That's not what I said. So okay, just okay. The internal reservations, Bomma has, you know, announced he would, you know, implement, right? So what does it mean? The Madigas who are asking for internal reservation are happy that they're assured of a certain section of the reserved quota. But those who are cornering the benefits all these years are not happy that now they'll have a restricted share within the quota. Now, how will this work out in a constituency? Wherever there's a Madiga candidate, Congress has fielded 10, BJP another 9 or 10, JDS, I forget the numbers. Wherever any party fields a Madiga, the other two parties don't field the Madiga. Why is that? That is, they're playing these factions against each other. So all the non-Madigas will vote the other party. So BJP will lose some, Congress will lose some. Because everyone has fielded Madigas. In some cases, Madigas might even win. We have 36 reserved constituencies, by the way.
36.
So that's got to be a very, very interesting outcome to watch.
In Congress, what happened was, there is, see, in Dalit simple terms, there is right SC, left SC. Okay. Right are considered as elite. Left is untouchable. Touchable and untouchable Dalits, you know, SC. So,
no, there are, I mean,
see, the thing is, Congress, we have Mr. Kharge, Dr. Parmeshwar, they are all right Dalits. What BJP did was they caught hold of one left Dalit, that is Karjol. They made him minister. They tried to promote him as a Dalit face of BJP. To certain extent, it fetched them results, but not to the extent.
Congress did it, no? With Anjaneya, they made him.
That's what they tried to work on what Congress was lacking. BJP. That's how politics work.
It's a little complicated. Yeah, it's a different panel. But last question, Basav.
Shivam has a question. Shivam,
no, we don't have time. Shivam sort of raised his hand very late. Basav, last.
He said, no, we'll end outside. Bangalore is a hospitable people.
I don't know, yeah. You have to ask big people at BIC, like Lekha.
Shivam, just a question. Shivam, the question.
Okay, I'm going to ask a very short question. Is that, see, with increased urbanization and economic mobility that we have seen post economic liberalization, globalization, etc., there seems to, this is a question actually, is are people trying to like transcend the idea of caste and opting a national identity and voting based on that? Do you have any thoughts on this? Like,
Easy question, but the answer is not easy, right? So,
yeah, I mean, but I think Sugata will take it. Yeah, please.
Shivam, can you have a question so that then we can answer?
I like how the moderator will be overruled by a panelist. This is how I think the election is going to turn out as well. I have a simple question. How many of you expect any party getting a majority in this election? And okay, sorry. Same question, but despite all the anti-incumbency that is there in every election cycle in Karnataka, would you agree that only if the opposition is split, only if the BJP is split, can the Congress get a majority? Otherwise, with the three-party system, Congress getting a majority without a split BJP is almost impossible. Would you agree with this assessment?
yeah, so two questions if you...
Something no one has ever considered.
No, split BJP, perhaps the reference was to KJP, 2013. Yeah.
It's a history.
That possibility doesn't exist.
No, the question is, without the possibility of split in BJP, can the Congress envisage a majority, That was the
No, the
question.
first question, what would be the party positions or how many seats? Who would get the majority? Not number-wise you are not asking. Because next 2-3 days, the real tone for all the parties will be set. Still, Mr. Modi has to come, Shah, so many, Priyanka Gandhi is coming, so a lot of things will happen next 3-4 days.
Okay, I think we can continue. Whose question?
My question.
I had a question. No, Baso, to answer really, very quick thing. See, people as individuals, we have multiple identities. I'm just borrowing from Amartya Sen. Multiple. You choose the situation to forward something else. Say, if you think you're going to be benefit by pushing your caste thing, you're going to push it further. If you're going to, if you're going to benefit by pushing your professional identity, you'll do that. So I think people play multiple discs. They're disc jockeys basically. So they sort of play different things at different. They switch identities. Younger voters, it's a very.
We're way past
You have to specify whether it's rural voters or kind of exposure. All those things are very variable, right?
So thank you, Sugata. Thank you, Chandan. Thank you, Asha. And Kabir, you're a terrific sort of surprise for us. Thanks to you also. So go out and vote. That is the message on May 10th, as everyone else seems to be saying. Thank you and good night.